From Washington, D.C., I'm Allister D'Souza. This is Washington Watch, a weekly roundup of the biggest stories from the United States and beyond. The Trump administration has told American embassies to pause student visa applications as it expands its social media vetting process. No details on what this stepped-up vetting would include. According to the Guardian newspaper, the U.S. began enhancing its scrutiny of students' social media in March in connection to pro-Palestinian rallies seen on campuses. Back and forth rulings on Trump's tariffs, which ended up as a win for the president, at least for now. On Wednesday, the U.S. Court of International Trade blocked Trump's tariffs, saying they are illegal. The White House fought back. Less than 24 hours later, a federal appeals court reinstated the tariffs for the time being. Threatening to restart the trade war with Beijing, U.S. President Trump, in a social media post, says China has violated a 2-week-old tariff truce. Trump did not say how China has broken the agreement. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says U.S.-China trade talks are a bit stalled. He says a call between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping could help things progress. And after a turbulent 5 months, Elon Musk is saying goodbye to the Oval Office. He has stepped down as the chief of the Department of Government Efficiency, marking a tenure filled with legal setbacks and clashes with cabinet members. Musk began with an initial cost-cut target of $2 trillion, which then shifted to $1 trillion and ultimately to $150 billion. Chaos, confusion, and a chilling reality for international students. The Trump administration this week further stepped up its fight against Harvard. Separately, it has also temporarily stopped visa interviews for foreign students coming to the U.S. Here's more in this report.
Is the great American dream over? Well, for most international students, that seems to be the case, as the Trump administration is now wielding its most powerful tool against one of its most critical assets, international students. In its fight with academia, the White House has cracked down on students, from targeting Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students to revoking visas for Chinese students. While a federal judge has blocked Trump's ban on Harvard from enrolling foreign students, the crackdown doesn't end here. The president has now called for a cap on the percentage of foreign students at Harvard to 15%.
They're not investing in Harvard and all of our, we are. So why would 31%, why would a number so big? I think, number one, I think they should have a cap of maybe around 15%, not 31%. We have people who want to go to Harvard and other schools. They can't get in because we have foreign students there. But I want to make sure that the foreign students are people that can love our country.
Trump's move has expanded from seeking to eliminate anti-Semitism to targeting the entire foreign student population in the US, leaving millions of lives in limbo, with Indian students among the most impacted, followed by Chinese students.
Well, I feel like at a place like this, like no matter where you are, the people do make the place. Having different places and having different people to make that place is extremely important. I feel like it's something that should be reviewed.
I just see how hard they work, how they, and a lot of times support their family as well. So yeah, I think that international students are part of what makes Harvard Harvard. So yeah, I think that they're definitely a big part of this school, and they're also, immigrants in general are a huge part of America.
Meanwhile, across the globe, US embassies have reportedly been asked to stop scheduling appointments for student visas as it prepares to expand social media vetting for applicants. A move that could severely delay visa processing and hurt universities, for whom international students are critical for their finances. The State Department will now look into an applicant's social media activity and flag anything that they deem objectionable. The question that now remains: can America's most elite universities survive without international students? Or will Trump's crackdown bring an end to the Ivy League dream?
Now, as we heard there, the US is said to be pausing all new visa interviews of prospective students hoping to study in the States. However, those who have already secured a visa interview are not affected. The move comes as the Trump administration is said to be further expanding its social media vetting process. Since 2019, visa applicants have provided social media information, but no details on how a visa could now be rejected based on this new stepped-up screening. Some reports say it could be whatever the government finds inflammatory, such as perhaps taking part in an anti-Israel rally. Based on that, critics question if even posting a picture of, say, the humanitarian situation in Gaza could mean trouble. Let's get you more on this. We're joined by Jessica Gilani, an expert at social media hygiene. She is with the Pitt Cyber Institute, which looks at cutting-edge cyber research at the University of Pittsburgh. Thanks very much, Jessica, for your time. Jessica, we are all guilty of this. We may often blindly follow others on social media. It's often, the spur of a moment decision. We may not even be thinking about whom we've exactly followed. What can someone do about those accounts we've kind of forgotten about, given you never know what might now be scrutinized in this new visa vetting process?
It's very tricky because the third-party services that are available actually violate the terms of service for many of the social media platforms that people use. So while there are options, there are tools that you can download to try to help with the management of this, it's technically in violation of the rules for platforms like Instagram, for example. And what that could mean is if you're caught using those, you could have your account disabled or revoked. In fact, the software program, the contractor that the government agencies are using to scrape people's accounts may in fact be in violation of a lot of the terms of service for these platforms.
So
other things
option,
that you can
then?
do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So other things you could do might just be like the old way of manually having to do it. It's not easy. It definitely takes time. But if you're doing it, you know that you are doing it well. Of course, the things that we put on the internet have longevity, and the data from those posts and that following is available. It's just a matter of whether or not the government agencies that are vetting these accounts and the social media of these visa applicants want to take that extra step and have the wherewithal to request the information from the platform companies.
Okay. Now, Jessica, is there a way for a person to go back years and look at their every single action on social media? What if it's like something as simple as a like from several years ago, to say a picture someone may have kind of reacted to on a centuries-old map, perhaps from the Middle East?
It's difficult because you can, other than doing it manually, there's not a way that is not violating the rules of a lot of these platforms like Facebook or Instagram and or X/Twitter, for example. I think, technically this is in violation of the First Amendment protections that do include visa applicants, but the administration seems eager to test the boundaries of the limits of those protections. So it does seem like the best course of action is to try to manually go through your account. Now, there are options for a lot of businesses to be able to manage social media through a program like Hootsuite, for example, but that's a paid service and it's technically only supposed to be for business accounts. So I'm not entirely clear if a personal account using that service would be in violation of it. And primarily, those tools are used to schedule posts in the future, not necessarily to cull prior social media records from one's account.
All right, and if a person's account, say, is put on a private setting on TikTok or Instagram, is there a way for officials to still scrutinize it?
So technically, they actually issued guidance earlier this morning saying that if a person's accounts, their social media accounts, are private, they want the Immigration and Customs officials to request that they make those accounts public for the vetting process. I'm not sure if they can require them to switch their accounts, but I think they are being encouraged to put a tremendous amount of pressure on people whose accounts are private.
So it seems like a lot of hard work to scrub yourself off the internet if you want to. Thanks very much indeed for your time here. Jessica Galani joining us this morning on Washington Watch. In other news now, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, is leaving his government role as a top advisor to President Trump after spearheading an overhaul of the federal workforce. When he came on board, Musk originally pledged to cut up to $2 trillion from the annual federal budget, but the actual number is far less.
Invited to stay as long as you want. At some point, I guess he wants to get back home to his cars.
Stay as long as you want. That's what President Donald Trump told his once close confidant Elon Musk. But it seems the Tesla chief has not taken the president up on his offer. Announcing his exit as a special government employee on Thursday, after his scheduled 130 days were up, Musk thanked President Trump for the opportunity while reiterating that the mission of Doge will continue despite his exit. While Musk's role was temporary, there were speculations galore on whether the billionaire will stick to the legal deadline. His quick and unceremonious departure comes a day after he criticized Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, which proposes multi-trillion-dollar tax breaks and a boost to defense spending, calling it disappointing. In the past 5 months, Musk made some big claims about Doge's work. From allegedly having saved $160 billion through mass layoffs, eliminating what he called crazy diversity contracts and cutting global aid programs. Yet, reports suggest only $61.5 billion has been itemized publicly, with only $32.5 billion having supporting documentation. Certain studies also suggest Doge's action will cost American taxpayers $135 billion this fiscal year. Musk proved to be a turbulent force in Washington, clashing in private with Trump's cabinet-level officials, while stoking controversy abroad over election interference and facing mass protests at home. With Musk and Tesla facing the brunt of escalating political blowback, President Trump even stepped in with face-saving showcase on the White House lawns. Despite appending several federal agencies, Musk ultimately failed to deliver the generational savings he had promised. Moving away from full-time politics, Musk has many challenges ahead, from trying to win back investors' confidence to overcoming the failure of SpaceX's latest launch. For now, the tech billionaire is back to selling the future. Disha Bagchi, NDTV World.
Legal whiplash this week that nearly saw Trump's tariff plans blocked, only to then be restored later. A U.S. federal court of appeals has given Trump sweeping tariffs a reprieve, putting a stay on an earlier ruling from another court. This means the U.S. can continue collecting tariffs while the stay is in place. The U.S. Court of International Trade had earlier ruled in a surprise decision that the tariffs were illegal. For more, we are joined by economist and trade expert David Edick. Thank you very much, David, for joining us here on Washington Watch. David, let's take a step back, if you will. First, could you just broadly and simply explain to us why the U.S. International Trade Court said that Trump did not have unlimited powers to impose those tariffs in the first place?
Well, much of Donald Trump's policymaking in terms of trade is drawn on old, obscure legislation. In this particular instance, the legislation that he drew on was really designed in a Cold War era, dealing with security issues, security conflicts with potential trade partners. So this ruling would limit his authority under that Cold War era act.
And the judge said that that couldn't be implemented as far as this emergency economic power legislation goes. Got that? Now, David, the decision by the appeals court is a legal win for Trump, at least for now. But what about the long term? Does the fate of his global tariff regime look uncertain? How would you characterize it?
Well, uncertainty is the word all the way through this. For businesses, for people, for governments, and now for Donald Trump. I think it's likely that the courts will ultimately kick this to the Supreme Court. But even then, ultimately, this is about politics. This is about power. And Congress is likely to be drawn in at some point to give President Trump clearer trade authority.
Right, and many hoping that it would go to the Supreme Court so it offers less uncertainty and more clarity. But how much does what we saw this week hamper the US's bargaining power? Several countries, including India, are in the midst of hammering out trade deals with the United States.
Yeah, it really complicates things for everybody, including U.S. government trade negotiators. That said, the environment, the larger environment, is one of which tariffs are an emerging policy from the United States. I just think that governments abroad and businesses need to have that in mind as they move forward. I would suggest that governments abroad would be wise to continue the negotiating process, to stay in front of the situation, to stay in front of U.S. negotiators.
David, would you go as far as saying that people negotiating, people in foreign countries negotiating with the U.S. should continue talking but stall in some way, perhaps?
Each team, each government will have to choose their best approach. Yes, stall, but there's risk in stalling. I mean, that's why I say that uncertainty is the dominant theme here. There are no easy decisions from a negotiator's perspective.
Right, David, and if Trump, very quickly, in a nutshell here, if Trump can't use those emergency economic powers from that legislation that he's tried to, what option does he have left in terms of other ways that he can push his trade agenda through?
Well, there are other legal options on the books currently that he can pursue, but I think ultimately if the courts really get in the way, Donald Trump can go to the U.S. Congress. He dominates the U.S. political system. He dominates the Republican Party. The Republican Party has a majority in the House and Senate. He can get things through.
Right, David Edick, run out of time here. Thank you very much for your insights on this ongoing saga with the Trump tariffs. In other news now, this week saw the Trump administration asking a federal judge to dismiss a lawsuit over a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador 2 months ago. The U.S. Supreme Court has ordered the government to facilitate Kilmar Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S., but President Trump insists that Garcia is a member of a transnational gang. Fighting for Garcia is an Indian-American lawyer determined to bring him back. I caught up with Rina Gandhi, partner at law firm Murray Osorio, earlier this week. Rina, the Trump administration this week has sought to dismiss the case of Abrego Garcia from being returned back to the United States. The argument being that he is in a foreign country, it's not in the US jurisdiction, the US court cannot do anything to really bring him back. What's your response to that?
So court has already reviewed these arguments. These are the same arguments that they have presented before, and the judge dismissed these arguments as not valid, as not persuasive. The timing of this filing is a bit suspicious. I think there may have been a deadline they were approaching, and maybe this was the remedy to file something timely. But from our perspective, there's really no response needed. A judge has already analyzed and dismissed these arguments.
Any idea on when we'd possibly hear back and what the judge decides on that?
I'm not exactly sure. Obviously, it's up to her. I don't think there's much analysis needed, given she's already reviewed and adjudicated this filing.
All right. The Supreme Court in April said that the Trump administration needs to facilitate the bringing back of
the release and the return. Yes,
okay,
correct.
Release and the return back to the United States. Nothing has happened since then. A U.S. District Court judge is talking about potentially looking at contempt of court. What would that contempt of court look like?
Honestly, it can look like a whole host of different things. It could be against the attorneys themselves, against certain government officials. It could be monetary, non-monetary. There's a number of different ways that this can look. I think, though, that this judge understands the political nature of this case, understands the importance of this case, and is not trying to push where she does not need to. And I think she would use that sparingly and only as a last resort. And I don't know if we're there yet.
In a scenario where you've exhausted all options, the Trump administration refuses to comply with the judge's orders. What's the scenario? What are we looking at? What are your options?
I think it's kind of a scary proposition, right? We have a Supreme Court order. We have a system of checks and balances. And no president is above the Supreme Court. Right? That is the whole point of our three branches and this balance. I certainly don't want to envision what our country looks like if we get to that point.
Is there a scenario where he might potentially have to move to a third country that's safer than the current one in El Salvador?
I think he'd have to get released first. He's in jail, right? As far as we're aware, he's in jail.
Right.
So if he were to be released from jail, I think there are probably a number of different ways we could facilitate his return, right?
Either to the United States or elsewhere.
Or elsewhere, right? Especially lucky for him, if you will. I mean, he's not a lucky person, let's be clear, but lucky for him, this case has gotten international attention. And I imagine there are other countries who would offer him potentially safe haven. I have no idea. I've not asked any other countries because we are not giving up. But to answer your proposition, could he move or should he move to another country? I think the first step is he's got to get released from jail. If he's released from jail, then we can talk about other options.
Reena Gandhi, thank you very much for your time here on NDTV.
Thank you so much.
Time for a quick wrap on some other stories that made headlines this week. In a move set to impact millions of immigrants, the U.S. Supreme Court has cleared the way for the Trump administration to strip the legal right to temporarily live and work in the U.S. for as many as 500,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, pushing the total number of people who could be newly exposed to deportation to nearly 1 million. The court will now let the Department of Homeland Security to end so-called parole programs that gave migrants temporary legal status, marking the second time in less than 2 weeks that the court has cleared the way for possible deportations of hundreds of thousands of migrants. Tacos taking on a whole new meaning for President Donald Trump after a new phrase on Wall Street coined by Financial Times columnist Robert Armstrong, the acronym TACO, now standing for Trump Always Chickens Out. It mocks the president's back and forth on tariff policies. The reference appeared to have the U.S. president visibly annoyed.
Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation. You set a number.
And Faizan Zaki, with roots from Hyderabad, has won the 2025 Scripps National Spelling Bee. He beat over 240 of the country's top young spellers. The 13-year-old from Allen, Texas, who lost in a lightning round tiebreaker last year, clinched the title in a tense 20th round, outlasting fellow finalist Sarvadan Kadam, correctly spelling Éclaircissement, winning a $50,000 prize.
Éclaircissement. E-C-L-A-I-R-C-I-S-S-E-M-E-N-T. Éclaircissement.
That is correct.
National Spelling Bee champion. Somebody floor. Peter Faizan.
Faizan Zaki, you are the 2000.
Éclaircissement, had to look up what that actually meant, and in case you're wondering what it means, it's a noun, a French word which means seeking clarification. That's it for me, for here on Washington Watch. Thanks for your company.